Somewhere between TikTok relationship coaches and Instagram reels, my wife became convinced she needed to fix me. Her first step? Banning video games like she was grounding a teenager. But before I get into all that, let me back up. Because if I just start with the ban, you're going to picture some guy in a basement surrounded by energy drink cans, neglecting his wife, forgetting to shower, and rage quitting at 2 in the morning. And that's just not what this is. So let me tell you who I actually am. My name is Dean. I'm 33 years old. I work in logistics management, which sounds boring because it is, but it pays well and I'm good at it. I wake up at 6:30, I'm out the door by 7:45, and I'm home most evenings around 6. I'm not a workaholic, but I'm not coasting either. I carry my weight. And I mean that literally, not just professionally. At home, I do stuff. Real stuff. I'm not one of those guys who somehow can't figure out how the dishwasher works or acts mystified by a laundry machine. I fix things when they break. I take the car in for service before the check engine light becomes a crisis. I handle the insurance stuff, the utility stuff, the hey, the bathroom faucet is leaking stuff. Last spring, I repainted our back deck by myself over a long weekend. Nobody asked me to. I just noticed it needed doing, and I did it. I also actually show up for my wife. When Elise wants to go to dinner, I go. When she wants to spend a Saturday walking around some outdoor market looking at handmade candles and locally sourced honey, I go. When she says, I just want to stay in and watch something together tonight, I sit down on that couch and I watch whatever she picked, even if it's a 4-part documentary about the British royal family. I'm present, I'm engaged, I'm not perfect, but I'm a good husband. I say all this not to brag, because honestly, I think this stuff is just the baseline. This is just what it means to be a functioning adult partner. I'm not looking for a medal here. I'm just establishing the facts, because the facts matter a lot for what comes later. Now, after all of that, after the job, the house, the errands, the effort, when I finally get a couple hours to myself in the evening, I play video games. That's it. That's my thing. I've been playing games since I was a kid. It's never been some out-of-control addiction. It's just how I decompress. When your brain has been running logistics spreadsheets and emails and conference calls all day, sometimes you just need to turn off the real world and go do something completely different. Something where the problems are interesting and there are no real consequences. My taste in games is pretty varied, honestly. I love shooters when I want something fast and social. Me and a few guys from college still jump on together a few nights a week. We'll play for an hour, hour and a half, talk trash, catch up, laugh about dumb stuff. It's like a standing hangout that doesn't require anyone to drive anywhere. But my real love? Strategy games, Civilization, Total War, Age of Empires. The kind of games where you sit down, and 4 hours later you realize it's 10:30 at night, and you just accidentally conquered medieval France. There's something genuinely satisfying about that kind of slow, thoughtful gameplay. You're building something, planning, thinking 10 moves ahead. It's chess, but with armies and trade routes and diplomacy, and occasionally a barbarian invasion that wipes out your entire left flank. And then sometimes I just want to disappear into a big story-driven RPG for a few weeks. Good writing, interesting world, headphones on, almost meditative, honestly. The point is, it's a hobby, a real one. No different from a guy who unwinds by watching football every Sunday, or fishing on weekends, or going to the gym, or binge-watching 3 seasons of some crime drama on Netflix. People have things they do to relax. This is mine. And for a long time, Elise got that. She never played games herself, but she didn't have a problem with it either. When we first started dating, she'd sometimes sit next to me on the couch while I played, scrolling her phone or reading, just existing in the same space. Comfortable, easy. She used to joke that at least she always knew where I was and what I was doing. We'd been married almost 4 years at the point where this whole story starts. And in all that time, video games had never once been a serious conversation between us. Never an argument, never a real source of tension. I genuinely never saw it coming. Looking back, I think I was too comfortable, too confident that because things had been fine for years, they'd just stay fine. I didn't notice the shift when it started. Or maybe I noticed and just didn't take it seriously enough. Either way, it was coming. The thing about slow shifts is that you don't notice them until you're already in the middle of one. Looking back, I can now pinpoint exactly when things started to change. But at the time, it just felt like background noise. Like a song you don't realize is annoying until it's been playing on repeat for 2 weeks straight. It started with the content. Elise has always been a phone person. Scrolling Instagram, watching Reels, going down TikTok rabbit holes at 11 at night. That's just her thing. I never cared. We all have our screens. But somewhere around, I want to say, 8 or 9 months ago, the content she was consuming started to shift. The wellness stuff she used to watch, recipes, home decor, travel inspo, that was getting quietly replaced by relationship advice content. And not the normal kind. The kind with thumbnails that say things like, "Is your husband a man-child?" and "Signs you married an immature guy," and "What real men do with their free time." She started sending me some of it. At first I thought it was funny. She'd forward me a clip of some guy in a fitted polo with a ring light telling me that real men wake up at 5 a.m. and do cold plunges, and I'd send back a thumbs-up emoji or a laughing face. We'd joke about it. I called it LinkedIn motivation but angrier. "This guy has a lot of opinions about strangers," I said once. "He makes some good points though," Elise said. I should have registered that response differently. I did not. Because here's the thing about that content, and I say this without any bitterness, just as an honest observation. It's engineered to make you feel like something is wrong. That's the whole business model. If your relationship is fine, you don't click. So they have to make you feel like your relationship isn't fine. They find the most relatable, average, genuinely harmless thing a person does, and they reframe it as a red flag, a symptom, evidence of a deeper problem. And video games? Video games are basically their favorite punching bag. I started noticing the shift in how Elise looked at me when I sat down to play. It was subtle at first, a slight tightening around her eyes, a quiet exhale. The kind of expression that isn't quite a comment, but is definitely a statement. Then came the comments themselves. "Are you playing again tonight?" Not a question. A temperature check. The word "again" doing a lot of heavy lifting. I'd say yes, just for a couple hours, and she'd do this thing where she'd nod slowly and look away. Like I'd said something disappointing, but she was choosing to rise above it. It was theatrical in a way that felt new. Elise had never been a dramatic person. We'd always communicated pretty directly. This new language of sighs and pointed silences felt imported from somewhere else. From the content, I realized, she was performing a version of something she'd seen modeled online. The comments got more direct over time. Successful men don't spend their evenings in front of a screen. I looked up from my desk. Successful men also don't get unsolicited performance reviews at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday. She didn't laugh. That used to make her laugh. Another time, she sat down next to me while I was about 3 hours into a total war campaign, genuinely invested, managing a 3-front war that had taken me 40 minutes of careful setup to engineer, and she said, completely unprompted, "Don't you think this is kind of childish? Like grown men playing pretend war games?" I paused the game. I turned and looked at her. I said very calmly, "You just watched 6 hours of a reality show where adults compete to see who can make the best cake. That's different." How? She didn't really have an answer for that one, but it didn't matter, because the argument wasn't actually about logic. It was about a feeling she'd been fed, that my hobby specifically was a symptom of something wrong with me. And feelings like that don't respond well to counter-arguments. They just dig in deeper. Over the following weeks, it escalated. The jabs became more frequent, more pointed. She started comparing me to guys she'd seen in videos, vague, hypothetical, successful men who apparently spent their evenings reading improving literature and handcrafting furniture and waking up with the sun. Men like that are building something with their free time, she said one evening. I'm building a Roman empire, I said, completely seriously. The logistics involved are actually pretty sophisticated. She stared at me. I'm half joking, I added. Which half? Here's what was actually starting to get to me, though. Not the jokes and the jabs. I could handle those. What got under my skin was the way she started treating my free time like it was something she had authority over. She'd interrupt games to ask me to do something that could clearly wait. She'd start conversations right in the middle of sessions, not because she had anything urgent to say, but as a way of pulling me out of it. Once she literally stood in front of my monitor during an online match with friends and said, I need to talk to you about something, and the something turned out to be whether we should try a new brunch place on Sunday. I started feeling less like a husband and more like a teenager whose parent was trying to break him of a bad habit. And the lectures. Lord, the lectures. She'd get into these long, earnest monologues about growth and maturity and what a husband was supposed to look like. Where she got this image of what I was supposed to be, I have no idea. But it was clearly assembled from a patchwork of podcast sound bites and TikTok takes and whatever her algorithm had decided she needed to hear that week. I listened. I tried to engage. I tried to explain, calmly and reasonably, that I was a functional adult who paid the bills, handled the house, showed up for our relationship, and also happened to enjoy unwinding with video games in the evenings. That these things were not in conflict. That enjoying a hobby didn't make me immature any more than her watching reality television made her shallow. She heard me, but she wasn't listening. There's a difference. And then, on a perfectly normal Tuesday night, I was sitting at my desk, headset on, playing Civilization, minding my business, doing absolutely nothing wrong. Elise walked into the room, crossed her arms, and said, with complete sincerity, I forbid you from playing video games. I took off my headset. I looked at her. I actually had to replay the sentence in my head a few times because I genuinely wasn't sure I'd heard it correctly. You what? I forbid it, she said again, steadier this time, like she'd rehearsed this. You need to grow up, Dean. I'm not going to sit here and watch my husband waste his life on games. Other husbands are out there improving themselves. I deserve better than this. And there it was. Not a conversation, not a concern, an ultimatum, a ban, handed down from on high by someone who had apparently appointed herself the authority on how I spent my Tuesday evenings. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even raise my voice. I just sat there for a moment, looking at her, and I felt something shift quietly inside my chest. Not rage, not even hurt exactly. Just a very calm, very clear realization. Okay, fine. She wants me to put down the games and grow up. All right, Elise, let me show you what that looks like. Here's something I've learned about arguments with your spouse. The worst thing you can do, the thing that actually changes nothing and fixes nothing, is to blow up. Yelling feels good for about 30 seconds. Then you've got a bigger mess than you started with. Nobody's actually heard anything. And now you're both sleeping on opposite sides of the bed with 6 inches of cold silence between you. So I didn't blow up. Instead, I looked at Elise, nodded slowly, and said, You know what? Maybe you're right. She blinked. She had clearly prepared for a fight. The absence of one threw her completely off balance. Maybe I do need to rethink how I'm spending my time, I said. Calm, reasonable, thoughtful even. I hear you. I'm going to take this seriously. Elise looked at me like I'd just started speaking a foreign language. Then, slowly, a small smile. The satisfied kind. The, I finally got through to him kind. She reached over and touched my arm. I'm really glad you're hearing me, she said. Oh, I'm hearing you, I said. And I meant that completely. I want to be clear about something. I wasn't planning anything petty. I wasn't sitting there plotting revenge. What I was doing was something more honest than that. I was deciding to take her premise seriously and follow it to its logical conclusion. She wanted me to stop being the guy who sits at home, comfortable and present, gaming with friends a few evenings a week. She wanted me to be the kind of man she'd been watching in those videos. The rugged, independent, constantly out in the world version of masculinity that her algorithm had decided was the gold standard. Fine, I could do that. Starting that weekend, I became a completely different person. Not in secret, not sneakily, right out in the open, with full transparency and zero apology. Friday night, I texted my buddy Marcus. Hey, you and the guys doing anything tonight? 2 hours later, I was at a bar across town with 4 friends, watching a game, eating wings, staying out until midnight. I told Elise where I was going, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and walked out the door like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was. The following week, I agreed to go fishing with my coworker James and 2 of his friends. Not a day trip either. A full weekend thing. Drove out Thursday evening, set up camp by a lake, stayed through Sunday morning. No cell service for most of it. I told Elise the plan on Wednesday night, left her the address of the campsite, and went. She asked, a little uncertainly, "The whole weekend?" "That's what guys do," I said pleasantly. "Outdoors, fresh air. It's good for you." She didn't really have a counter-argument to that one. The weekend after that, I started playing basketball again. Found a gym nearby with open court nights on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Joined a casual recreational baseball league that played Saturday mornings. Started staying late after games because the guys would go get food, and obviously I went with them. That's what you do. That's the social fabric of it. There were spontaneous Sunday afternoon trips to watch college football at Marcus's place. Garage afternoons with James where we'd work on his old truck and drink beer and talk about nothing in particular for 4 hours. A weekend lake trip with a bigger group that got organized on basically a Wednesday with a "you in" text that I responded to with "absolutely." I was never unreachable. I always told Elise where I was going. I wasn't hiding anything. I came home. I was fine. I was in a good mood. I just wasn't home very much. And I wasn't playing video games. Not once. I kept that promise completely. Here's the thing about gaming from a purely logistical standpoint, and this is the part I don't think Elise ever actually thought about. When I was playing games, I was home. I was in the next room. I was available. If she needed something, I was 30 feet away. If she wanted to come in and talk, I could pause. If something came up, I was there. The only thing I was doing was existing in my own space with a headset on for a couple of hours. The alternative, the real man alternative, meant I was physically gone. For hours, sometimes days. Doing things that had nothing to do with our home or our life together. Fully, genuinely, geographically unavailable. I don't think she'd run that particular comparison through her head before issuing the ban. She was starting to run it now. I noticed the first cracks. I came home from basketball on a Thursday around 9:30, showered, made myself a late dinner, and Elise was on the couch looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen in a while. Not the TikTok-educated disapproval face. Something older, something more honest. "You're gone a lot," she said. "I'm staying active," I said. "Getting out of the house, being social, all the stuff." She nodded, didn't say anything else, but she watched me eat dinner with this quiet, slightly unsettled energy, and I noticed it. A few days later she asked, casually, but not casually at all, "Who were you with last night?" "Marcus and those guys." "Why?" "Just asking." She wasn't just asking. I know my wife. The wheels were turning, and they were turning in a direction I genuinely hadn't intended. She was starting to wonder if something was wrong. Not just, "Dean's never home." More like, "Dean seems fine and I don't know where he is, and I don't recognize this version of him." The suspicion thing started somewhere in week 2. She checked in more, texted during the day, not angry texts, just kind of probing ones. "How's your day? What time will you be home? Are you with James again?" She started asking about specific friends by name, wanting details. She'd be awake when I got home, which she normally wouldn't be, sitting up reading or on her phone in a way that felt like waiting rather than actually reading. One night she said, "You seem different lately." "I'm growing," I said, "becoming my best self." She looked at me for a long moment. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking," I said. And I wasn't really. Because what I was doing was showing her something true. Not inventing a fake version of events to manipulate her. Just living exactly the life she said she wanted for me and letting the reality of it land wherever it landed. I'll be honest with you. There was some satisfaction in it. I'm not going to pretend there wasn't. Watching her slowly realize what she'd actually asked for, watching the man-child who games get replaced by a guy who's never available and always doing his own thing, and seeing her reaction to that reality versus her reaction to the fantasy. Yeah, that landed. But here's the thing. Around weeks, the satisfaction started getting complicated. Because Elise wasn't just annoyed. She was genuinely unhappy. Not in the theatrical, performative way she'd been unhappy about video games. In a real, tired, worried kind of way. She wasn't sleeping as well. She'd gone quiet in a way that wasn't pointed or passive-aggressive. It was just sad. One evening I came home, and she was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, and she didn't look up immediately when I walked in. And something about that image, my wife sitting alone in the kitchen at night, knocked something loose in me. I didn't want to hurt her. That had never been the point. The point was to show her something. And she was seeing it. I could tell she was seeing it, even if she hadn't said it out loud yet. I sat down across from her at that kitchen table. "Hey," I said. "Hey," she said. We sat there for a minute. "I think we should talk," I said. She looked up, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, the expression on her face wasn't filtered through anything she'd seen online. It was just her. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I think so too." We ordered pizza that night. Neither of us felt like cooking, and there was something about the idea of a real sit-down dinner with candles and effort that felt like too much pressure for a conversation that needed to be honest. Pizza and the kitchen table felt more like us, more like neutral ground. We waited until it arrived before we really started talking. There's an unspoken rule in marriages that serious conversations go better when everyone has eaten. Or maybe that's just us. Elise had her wine. I had a beer. The pizza was in the open box between us like a buffer zone. She spoke first. "I don't like what things have been like lately," she said. "I don't like who we've been." "Me neither," I said. And I meant it. "You're never home anymore." She turned her glass slowly in her hands. "I mean, you're technically home, but you're barely here. You're always going somewhere or coming back from somewhere. I feel like I live with a roommate who I occasionally see in the hallway." I let that sit for a second. Then I said, "Is that different from before?" She looked up. "Before all this?" I said. "Before the ban? Was I absent like that? Was I never around?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked back down at her glass. "No," she said quietly. "You weren't." "So what was the actual problem?" I asked. Not combative, genuinely asking. "Help me understand. What was I not giving you? What was missing?" And this is the part that I think surprised both of us. Because Elise is smart. She's genuinely thoughtful when she slows down enough to think rather than react. And when I asked her those questions and she actually sat with them, really sat with them, I could see on her face the moment she realized she didn't have a clean answer. "I just felt like," she started, stopped, tried again. "Those videos kept talking about men who were present, engaged, who put energy into their lives and their relationships. And I'd look over and see you gaming and I'd think, is this it? Is this as good as it gets?" "But was I not present?" I asked. "When you wanted to go somewhere, did I go?" "Yes." "When you wanted to talk, did I shut you down?" "No." "Did I stop handling stuff around the house? Stop paying attention to you? Stop showing up?" She was quiet for a moment. "No," she said. "You didn't." "So what exactly was broken?" I asked. What was the actual thing that needed fixing? And there it was, the question she couldn't answer. Because the honest answer, the one that was slowly surfacing on her face whether she wanted it to or not, was that nothing had actually been broken. Not really. Not in any concrete, real, tangible way. What had happened was that she'd spent months consuming content specifically designed to make her feel like something was wrong. And it had worked. It had taken a normal, happy enough, genuinely functional marriage and planted a seed of dissatisfaction that had nothing to do with her actual life. The content didn't know me. It didn't know us. It knew its audience's insecurities, and it knew exactly which buttons to push to keep people watching, sharing, and coming back for more. Elise put her face in her hands for a moment, not crying, just processing. "I made it into something it wasn't," she said. "Yeah," I said. "A little bit." "A lot," she corrected herself. She looked up. "Dean, I told you I forbade you from doing something, like you were—" She stopped. "Like I was a teenager," I offered. "I was going to say like you were a problem to be solved." She shook her head slowly. "That's not how I want to treat you. That's not who I want to be." Something in my chest loosened a little when she said that. Because that was the real thing, right there. Not the games, not the hobby debate. The fact that she'd stopped seeing me as her partner and started seeing me as a project. A before photo waiting for its after. And no marriage survives that for long without taking real damage. "I got so caught up in this idea of what you were supposed to be," she said, "and I completely lost sight of what you actually are." "Which is?" I asked. She gave me a small, tired, genuine smile. "Pretty decent, actually. High praise. Don't push it." I laughed. She laughed. It was the first real laugh between us in weeks, and it cracked something open. All that accumulated tension just quietly deflating like air out of a tire. Not dramatically, just gone. We talked for another 2 hours that night. Real talking. The kind without an agenda, without a point to prove, without anyone performing a version of themselves for an imaginary audience. She told me about the specific accounts she'd been following and how she'd slowly let them reshape her expectations. She said something I thought was really perceptive. That the content never actually told her what a good marriage looked like. It only ever told her what a bad one looked like. It dealt entirely in red flags and warning signs and things to watch out for. And when your whole information diet is framed around suspicion and dissatisfaction, you start finding evidence of it everywhere. Even in a husband who's sitting quietly in the next room, gaming with his friends, fully available, completely accountable, and doing nothing wrong. I told her honestly that the last few weeks had been a lesson I'd engineered on purpose. I didn't hide that. She deserved to know. She was quiet for a second. "You could have just talked to me," she said. "I tried," I said. "You weren't hearing it. You needed to feel it." She thought about that. "That's annoyingly fair," she said. "I'm occasionally wise. Don't ruin it." But she wasn't angry about it. Not really. I think on some level she understood that the demonstration had done something that the conversations hadn't. All the reasonable arguments in the world hadn't landed. But 2 weeks of actually experiencing the alternative, her husband perpetually elsewhere, untethered, unavailable, had shown her something that words just hadn't been able to reach. We also talked, for the first time seriously, about how we each actually need to unwind. And I mean actually, without judgment, without the content brain framing of what those things said about us as people. I need a few hours in the evenings to decompress. I'm an introvert by nature, even if I don't seem like one. The gaming scratches that itch in a way that hanging out in bars honestly doesn't. I came home from half those nights more tired than when I left. Genuine decompression for me is quiet, focused, mentally engaging, strategy games, a good RPG, an online session with friends where we're laughing and playing and it barely even feels like socializing because there's no pressure to perform. Elise, it turned out, had never really thought about what she needed to decompress. She'd just been filling that space with her phone, which was flooding her with content that made her feel vaguely anxious and dissatisfied. No wonder she'd been irritable. She'd been marinating in it for months. That was a thread we pulled on for a while. What does she actually want more of? Not theoretically, not according to some coach with a ring light, but actually, in her real life, with her real husband? More spontaneity, she said. More moments where it feels like we're actually living, not just maintaining. She didn't want performance reviews disguised as dates. She wanted to feel like we were building something together, experiencing things together, not just running parallel lives in the same house, that I could work with. That was real. That was something I actually wanted too. 2 weeks later, we took a trip. Nothing elaborate. A long weekend in a rental cabin about 3 hours out of the city. Mountains, a small lake, a fire pit, bad Wi-Fi. Just the two of us, away from the routines and the algorithm and the kitchen table where the heavy conversations lived. It was good. It was really good. The kind of trip where you remember why you married someone, where the person you fell for is still clearly right there, just temporarily buried under months of accumulated noise. We hiked. We cooked dinner together. We sat by the fire pit until midnight, talking about nothing important and everything important at the same time. We laughed a lot. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed laughing with her specifically. One evening she asked, carefully, like she was testing the temperature of the water, "Okay, so when we get home, the games thing. What about it? Show me something," she said. Like, what do you actually play? What's the appeal? I looked at her. Seriously? I'm asking a genuine question. So the night we got home, I sat down and showed her a few things. Not the competitive shooters. That felt like throwing her into the deep end. I pulled up a couple of co-op games instead. Things designed to be played together. She made fun of herself constantly for being terrible at the controls, which made us both laugh for about 20 minutes straight. Then she started actually figuring it out, and she got intensely, visibly competitive about it in a way that I found absolutely hilarious. "Don't let me win," she said seriously. "I want to actually win." "I would never," I said. She was spectacularly bad and very determined to improve, and it was genuinely one of the more entertaining evenings we'd had in months. We didn't suddenly become a couple that games together every night. That's not really how it went. It became an occasional thing, a Friday night every couple of weeks, or a lazy Sunday afternoon when neither of us had anywhere to be. More importantly, it became a thing she understood. Not tolerated, not endured. Actually understood, because she'd experienced it from the inside rather than judging it from someone else's framing. We also filled the life up in other ways. There was a farmer's market near us we'd somehow never gone to despite living in the neighborhood for 2 years. We started going most Saturdays. We joined a gym, which neither of us had done before, and worked out together 3 mornings a week in a way that was about 60% exercise and 40% making fun of each other. We started going to local events, art exhibitions, that outdoor concert series in the park on summer evenings. Small things. Consistent things. The kind of life texture that makes the ordinary feel deliberately chosen rather than just happening to you. And the content, Elise quietly cleaned up her feeds, unfollowed the relationship coach accounts and the "Is your man a man-child" rabbit hole. Started replacing it with things that actually added something to her day. She told me once, about a month later, that she hadn't realized how much ambient anxiety that content had been generating until it was gone, and the anxiety went with it. I'm not telling you this story because it has some big dramatic ending. Nobody moved out. Nobody cheated. Nobody said something unforgivable at Thanksgiving in front of the whole family. It's not that kind of story. It's the story of a marriage that got quietly infiltrated by noise from the outside and had to find its way back to the actual people inside it. And the way back wasn't a grand gesture or a tearful ultimatum. It was a kitchen table, a box of pizza, 2 hours of honest conversation, and 2 people deciding to stop trying to edit each other into better versions of themselves. Elise isn't my project. I'm not hers. We're just 2 people who chose each other and who have to keep choosing each other, not some algorithm-approved ideal version of each other. She still sends me videos sometimes. Occasionally, it's even one of those relationship coach types, But now she sends them with a caption like, "Okay, but this one is actually insane," and we roast it together for 5 minutes and move on. It's a small thing. It's the right thing. And last Tuesday night, I sat down at my desk, booted up a new campaign in Total War, put my headset on, and heard Marcus's voice in the lobby saying, "Finally, where have you been?" "Long story," I said. "You got time?" "Yeah," I said. "I got time." If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.